the lies gotten the best of me. Feels like I lost everything. I was thinking that I knew what was best for me.
Hey, it's our privilege and our opportunity to introduce today our special guest. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation because there's a lot of conversation to be had here. And thank you, Daniel Smith, for rolling with us again today and helping us connect with Pastor Wes Morgan, who you know, and I love him on the song Bless Me to Bless Someone Else, Kurt Carr, which, you know, that's just awesome. And then the soulful, smooth, smoky gospel musician with the R&B flavor, Wes Morgan. He stands as a cornerstone of change and compassion and inspiration. He is active in the community in such social issues such as substance abuse prevention and recovery. And when you hear his testimony, you know he's using what God has blessed him with and brought him through. There's a new single out called Churchy. And what else?
Oh, he has a book. And I'm going to ask him to unmute himself so we can hear his story coming up. It's called, his book is Change Your Mind, Change Your World, a 365-day journaling of change. It's on Amazon. But hey, I checked it out. It's a must-have. It's a must-have. So
Wonderful.
What's going on?
Oh man, just first of all, thank you guys for sharing your platform with me. I never take it lightly. I grew up a pastor's kid, so I know how sacred that office is. And when I say office, I'm not talking about in these days and times, just a pulpit, but any kind of platform that God has afforded to us. So thank you guys for sharing that with me and including me in what y'all are doing. I feel like I want to interview y'all more than like I want to know like what are y'all doing, you know? And but you know, I understand the purpose of this interview, but man, just a lot's going on, man. I mean, we could go any direction. So you're gonna have to be a little bit more direct with me because when you ask me what's going on, I feel like Marvin Gaye. What is going on? Because there's so much.
All right now, you preached already.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on? But no, I mean, I'm grateful, man. I'm enjoying this stage in my life. It is a very pivotal one for me on so many different levels. I could go in any direction on that, you know, in my personal life, my children, them growing up and flourishing and coming into some of the things that I've done in my life. And it's so amazing to watch that, but yet it's challenging, you know, doing that separation father to kids, because I've pretty much been with my kids more as a single parent than any. And that's a whole nother direction. So when you say what's going on, you asking me about the book, you know, the book.
You do have so many different angles that we could go and we could explore. And I actually, there's a lot of things I want to know. And so, yes, we're going to come down. Hopefully, not, you know, we won't hold you all day, but definitely I would like to know first about your new project. You've got a new single out and a new book. What happened or helped you birth both of these? If you could start with Churchy.
Yeah.
Okay, Churchy, I'm very excited about this song. The song was kind of I mean, obviously everything I do is unto the Lord, you know, always. But Churchy was really something that I put together because I got tired of explaining to everybody, you know, everybody comes up to me, how do you get your sound? You don't look like your sound, you know, and I'll let y'all fill in all the blanks and the peripherals on those thoughts. But you know, everybody, I've had grandmothers and granddaughters literally get into an argument in my face about whether I'm black or white. And I'm thinking, they got me an identity crisis. I'm going looking in the mirror like I do have a little tan, but I mean, I'm white. So it's funny. But the song really come up because, you know, I was my mother's an organist, church organist. My dad is a jazz guitarist and of course a preacher, bishop. My mother's a pastor as well. They sing, preach, the whole thing. And they too are unassuming. You know, if you looked at my mother, you would never dream that she was a church organist or a choir director. You know, you just wouldn't, she just don't look like nothing like that. So that song, I grew up down south, man. You know, my mother was playing organ, leading praise and worship while my dad preached. They was in a long revival down around Mississippi, and it's where my grandparents live. And so she knew that night when she was dancing on that organ and praising God, she felt me move, and she said, after the service, I gotta go. So she left, and the next morning, man, I think it was, I was born at Singing River Hospital in Moss Point, Mississippi. It's right next to Pascagoula. Sometimes people get it mixed up, which is down right on the water, right by Biloxi. So I was born, you know, I grew up, the song is I grew up down south in the church every day, church every day, because that's what we did. It was church, we had church on Sundays, Sunday nights, Monday nights, Tuesday night. We had church all around the week. So church every day. Mama played organ, dad would sing and preach about the good old faith and a better way. Now I find myself in all kind of places, new cultures, all new faces, trying to stay relevant and true to my raising. But the whole song is, I can't help that I'm churchy. That's what I grew up in. You know what I'm saying? So that's my culture. It's no different than somebody saying, I'm just gonna use some stuff just for point's sake. You know, it's nothing from no different than somebody saying, hey, I'm from the hood. You know, I can't, there may be some church hood people out there say, I can't help it, I'm hood church. You know what I'm saying? But
That's a thing. Yes.
yeah, it's really a tool, man, that I really wanted to use to let people know it's okay to talk about your heritage. A lot of people, and I throw myself in as well, we grew up in such strict restriction. You know, we couldn't hardly breathe. So when we got the chance to choose what breath we wanted to choose, we chose it. And sometimes we didn't choose well. Sometimes our relief was spelled and defined quite different than the right people in the world. So, you know, I wanted to make it all right for everybody to say, I can't help it, I'm churchy. It's a good thing. It's a swag. You know, it's a thing that the kids do.
I love listening. I have it, and I love listening to it in the car. It just got that nice cruise out sound, you know.
Yeah, and then the second verse, man, Sir Baptist nailed that thing because he talked about in the whole verse about all these people coming against us because what we believe, but we come from Granny's oil, good soil. Mama dressed us in 3 pieces. Look, bro, when I was a kid, man, I hated churches because it was suit, bow tie, 3-piece suit, bow tie, your hair was crisp. I mean, and you sat up there in that church like you were saved all your life, and you was only 3 years old. You hear me?
Yeah.
Like you got to be dignified how we grew up.
Yeah.
But it put such a reverence in me for God. That even later in my life, when I found myself in trap houses, and when I found myself in places, man, where it was just everybody smoking crack and everybody's snorting dope, and I found myself in so many promiscuous places. Those things that I grew up in, I did not realize it then, but that stuff started raising up in me. So when I say church, I'm not talking about just going to a church and having the antics of a church service. I'm talking about what church put in us, which was a reverence for God and a fear for God, and to know that if he ever messed up, that you could go to him and talk to him about it. And that's what I did when I got older, man. I remember the people who I'd go to juvenile detention. I started going to juvenile detention probably when I was 14, maybe. And I was in and out of it. They knew me so well. That lady in there, she knew what I wanted as soon as I come in the door. When they'd bring me in those cuffs, she'd give me my Bible. It had my name in it. She'd give me my Bible and tell me which cell block to walk down to. It was already open for me. I felt like Mayberry with Andy Griffin. I felt, you know how
Otis.
Otis. Yeah, that's what I felt like. I was like, dang, I'm a regular.
A regular.
A regular. but what I'm saying, and I'll finish with this, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that churchy thing that I'm singing about, I can't help it. Every time I run up against a wall, something inside of me that come from church makes me fight back. And baby, I've been fighting since I come out my mother's womb. So I'll let you answer the next question. I hope I answered it right.
Oh, you did. You did. Um, Carmela, did you have
Yeah, well,
something?
I wanted to ask about the journal as well. You know, you have such an amazingly rich story. What, you
Mm,
know, what was behind the idea for the journal?
It was the people. The people spoke up. I
Okay.
mean, when I would go out, I made a point. I told God, I said, if you'll get me out of it, I'll never stop talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
wow.
I'll never be ashamed about talking about being a crackhead. I've had people call me crackhead. I've had people call me, oh, that's that crackhead preacher. I used to go through all that stuff. But I promise God, if you got me out, I talk about it everywhere I go. And so um, I believe that ministry emerges from our journey,
Mm-hmm.
not our destination. Because
Come
I
on.
say this to people a lot, it's so important for us to share our story because that's where ministry comes from. For all
Mhm.
I know, I can meet you right now, Carmel, and y'all. For all I know, y'all always been squeaky clean like you are right now. But I bet if you really told the whole truth and nothing but the truth,
Exactly.
both of y'all would probably give me a different perspective.
Yes.
So
Hey,
you understand what I'm
I,
saying? It's
I
the
agree.
ministry emerges from the journey, but a lot of people don't want to talk about the journey because they want everybody to think that they've always been this way. They've
Exactly.
always been this clean. But the book came from going, and I told my story everywhere I go. I still do it. I go back to the product table and people come to me, how did you do it? What did you do?
Yeah.
Can you please help us? Do you have something like your test? So I have my testimony on DVD. If anybody does DVD anymore, but it's on YouTube now, praise the Lord. But
Mhm.
so my testimony's there, but they wanted something that they could put in their hands. So that's when I said, you know what, man, what I can do right now is I can put something together, thoughts and quotes that
Mm-hmm.
helped me every day of my life, baby step my way out of a life of debauchery. It
And
was
you,
just little baby steps. And so I
mm,
put it in a book. I put it in a book and then it's a journal as well.
mm,
So I
Mm-hmm.
give them a scripture, I give them a thought that helped me, I give them a scripture, and then I give them a place to journal. And I encourage a lot of men to do this because men don't talk like women do,
yeah.
for the most part. And I encourage men, man, leave this for your children because when they go through something and you're gone, you can't tell them how to get through it. They can go back and they can read the thought and they can see how you process that thought in
Hmm.
your journey. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
gift to your children, man. It's a gift to your loved ones. This is how I made it through. And that's really what the book is about. Change your mind, change your world. And I really believe that if we
I,
change our
I love that what you're talking about is a legacy, leaving a
Mm-hmm.
legacy behind. And I love that it helps a person to journal that journey. And that's so important because you have a lot of books today that just self-help, this is God, let's see what God is to you. But this is something that you, like you said, put your hands on and you can journal the journey and watch God transforming your life and their lives as they read the journal. And I think that's really important. Um,
Well, I'll say this one last
Mhm.
point. I did the journal. I've got a couple of them put laid around my house, but I did one. And the other day, I found one when I first started putting the book together. I found when I went back and read what I was saying 2 years ago, and it
Mm-hmm.
was so interesting to put my journey on a scale to where I could see where was my thought process right there. Have I grown? So it's a measuring stick as well. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, no,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, and it goes to my other thought I was thinking about the journey as well musically. It's like When did you discover that you could sing the way you sing and have that influence and power like that? Because you
Well,
got
as I
to
said,
before them.
my mother was she's an incredible singer. She's got an alto voice. Um,
Mhm.
so she raised me, man. My dad, as I said, was a jazz guitarist. So we lived in the church parsonage, which was a mobile home. And my mom and dad pastored the church down in New Orleans. And so it was crazy because my dad, he'd play guitar. He'd build these big old speakers and put them out on the front porch. I was afraid to come up on the school bus sometimes because I was afraid my friends were gonna laugh. He's sitting out there listening, playing to George Benson, all this. But then
Yeah.
my mother, I'd come in, and my mother, she'd pull them records off, and we come home, and she'd put on James Cleveland, and she'd put
Mhm.
on the Hawkins Family, and I
Wow.
mean, on and on. So that's what she would turn on when the kids come home from school.
Mm.
So it was funny, the dichotomy, because Dad was so jazzy and R&B, and then Mom was so churchy. Um,
And
so
gospelly.
you can imagine, you can imagine. But I loved what I heard, and I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to do, so I just mix them all up when I do my music. Uh,
Mm.
and so, man, my mother always, she would take me over to church when I was just a little kid, and she would walk. We had a shotgun church building, if you know what I mean, a center
Mm.
aisle all the way down, and she'd put me up on the stage, man, and she would turn on the sound system and she'd make me sing, and she would
Wow.
critique me. And I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, man. She'd be critiquing me. And that's when I knew I wanted to sing, man. I used to pray when I was a little boy every night. God, make me a singer, make me a singer. Because I
Wow.
love music. It was so part of me.
But the thing for me, you grew up well, you were born in Mississippi, and then they were in New Orleans. How how did that fly with your neighbors when they're playing, George Benson or the Hawkins, or I mean, how does that go for you?
Girl, we talking about New Orleans. You play
Okay.
whatever you want to play in New
Play
Orleans.
whatever you want to
Yeah,
play
you do
in New
whatever you
Orleans.
want. If you ain't
Yeah.
been, you better be careful.
Yes.
But no, I mean it was like that.
Hmm.
I remember, man, in our neighborhood there was a bar room right down. It was about maybe just a couple of blocks down from the
Hmm.
house. I always remembered that um, because my dad and mom would keep us on this side, and I don't know. It was just the whole neighborhood. You always had people in the neighborhood with speakers on the front porch. I don't know. I guess I was just and look and curb finders. I'm gonna really test y'all's age right now on their cars.
Uh-oh.
Curb
Yeah.
finders. You
Hmm.
remember those curb finders? Come here.
Curb finders. I ain't never had a curb
There's those.
finder.
Remember those old cars that had those little two pieces of wire on the fender
Oh
on the car?
yes, sort of like
Yeah,
the little spring.
that kept you from scuffing up the wheels. That's
Yes,
why they call them a curb finder.
yes.
But anyway, I'm just saying white walls and Cadillacs. That's
We
what I
need to bring
remember.
them curb finders back. I guess you had the
Right.
automatic thing, but anyway. Well, so my question then, first of all, it's real. There's no pretending. And I love your history. And the thing that touches me as I've caught snippets of your testimony from various videos and different things is the beautiful interaction between you and your parents. People who, because as you've told your story, you talked about, growing up as a preacher's kid, as did I. And a lot of us hit that bumpy road where you're like, I want to be my own person. This churchy stuff is not for me. I want to be out there. I want to do different things. I want to sing different things. I want to do different things. And so you started young with that, it seems to me.
Hmm.
How come that happened so early for you? Or am I wrong in making that sort of
No,
characterization?
no, no. I remember. I really do. I remember we moved from New Orleans when I was about 6 or 7. So I remember sitting on the organ bench with my mother and watching her lead praise and worship. I'd sit right on the bench with her, and I would watch her go in. I'd see her get high on the Lord. I'd see her come down. I'd see her cry during worship. She's a phenomenal worship leader, and she could play the organ too. Um, and she was a beautiful person. Um, I mean, I grew. I mean, that was my whole life.
Yeah.
It's my whole life. I hope I answered your question.
Well, I
Mhm.
But
guess the question is what, from what I've heard and what I listened to in your videos, you talk about, sort of smoking early, like 10, 11, 12. What brought on such a sense of exploration or departure at such an early age for you?
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the music. But yes, I really believe, sis, and my mother and father and myself, we still not as intense because we've gotten healed from a lot of it. But when we were kids, I have an older brother, and he's an
Mhm.
incredible dude. He's a heroin addict. He's a miracle to be living right now.
As are you?
So yeah, right, and so what happened is I look at it kind of on a graph because I have a younger sister, and she never really experienced that path. But
Okay.
by the time when my brother was, when before my mom and dad really started coming out of that strict, unnecessary stuff and really got a relationship with Jesus and got away from religion, that's when I was kind of going through the meat of all of that change. You know what I'm saying? And I was so sick of somebody telling me what I
Right.
couldn't do and never telling me why.
Mm.
I never understood that, and so I think I come out of my mother's womb kicking. It was that box that they tried to put me in, even as a child. It was too small for me, and I just would kick. You know what I'm saying.
Hmm.
It wasn't that I was better than anybody else. I just said I can't do this. This is what you're telling me God is, and what you're saying I got to do is contrary to. It's conflicting. It's an
Right.
oxymoron. You understand what I'm saying? And so I think something in me said, "Can I say it like I won't?" I said, "Hell no." I said, "I'm not doing that. Y'all can talk
What
about me
was
all
it?
y'all want." But I just said, I'm not living like this. And I think what I did, because they wouldn't let me find the middle of the road, I just said, you know what? I'm taking a right here. Or left, whichever one you want to call it. But
And
Hmm.
that happens. People rebel.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is, remember what Paul said? I'm going to bring a scripture in on this. Paul
Hmm.
said, the law has wrought all manner of evil concupiscence. And basically what he was saying is, because you're telling me I can't do something, the law has made me want to do what you tell me I can't do.
Mm.
And you take somebody in that kind of mindset or in that mode, if they don't have some real people around them to look and say, hey, listen, this is really about God. Let's just forget all the other stuff. Let's just be a lover of God. And that's what
Yeah.
happened to me. I learned that later on through my parents and through other people, officials in the judicial system. I kept going juvenile detention and jail, armed robbery charges. I mean, just kept going on and on and on. I had to realize that I was running from a system, but I was missing the center of the system, and that was
Hmm.
Jesus Christ. So when I fell in love with him, it still keeps me. I'm
Hmm.
still in my deliverance. God's still breaking stuff off of me.
So,
But I
so
ain't quit, but I won't quit. I just keep loving him. And the more I love him, the more he just
Hmm.
sheds me like an onion.
It's just too much for me. Ask of thee.
tell me that experience you had in prison and being around other people. Um, it must have really been trying on you in so many ways that you could be around people who that you could minister to. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
curious. Were you witnessing while you were in prison too? Did you sing? Did they know you could sing while you were in prison?
Well, when I was young in juvenile detention, they knew a lot of people. They knew my mom and dad. The church was a prominent church at the time. It was,
Oh,
so
mhm.
a lot of people knew. They knew where I come from. The stock, the heritage. They knew, and so they all kind of just always raised their eyebrow at me. But I was so super talented, and I give God glory on that. When I
Hmm.
didn't even know it. I was so super talented, man. I could go in the jail cell and find myself in a corner with Jesus saying, God, how did I get back in here? And then turn around and go out here and go sit at the table and minister a bunch of guys.
Wow.
It's just, man, I guess the turning point for me, I minister to a lot of guys that's been in prison and go to prison. I think a lot of it to me is when you go in, this is what I tell guys when they go in to do time or whatever, is you got to find God in that storm. God, he's always there. He's omnipresent. He's always there, and he's always concerned with you. And so, a lot of these guys, they go in blaming the system, blaming everybody else for what they did, and all you're doing in doing that is you're just prolonging your process. And so, when I would go to jail, man, I'd automatically look inwardly, and say, God, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to change? And so, yeah, man, they knew I sang, and especially in my later life when I started like in my later 20s, going in and out of jail, man, and judicial system, rehab centers, halfway houses. I'd always find myself, these guys want me to sing.
Wow.
Want me to talk to them about the word. Because even when I was busted, broken, in a horrible state, I still had that churchy down in me. So a lot of people, when they think church, they think a bad thing. No, church is God's bride.
All right.
That's why I tell people all the time, you don't talk about the church because you're talking about another man's woman.
Uh-oh.
You don't talk about another man's wife, bro. I've seen some little old boys put a whipping on some big boys for messing and talking to their wife. The last thing you want to do is mess the groom up and get him upset with you. I can't help it. I'm churchy.
That's right. That's right.
So you're churchy, and I get this. I'm struggling because you have such a, you were going through it for such a while, 15 years where you were going through, your substance issues. Do I have that time right? Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some other bouts, since that 15-year period. I'm just gonna be straight with you. Yeah, I've had a couple other bouts. Went through a divorce, and it sideswiped me a little bit, but I'm back, and that's the thing I tell people all the time. It's you win when you get up, you lose when you stay down, and that's what I keep saying. And you referenced this earlier about my mother and my father, my relationship with them. That's because I know that is a lot of my stability.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That's my destiny is tied to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The good, bad, and the ugly. It's just a fact.
Do you think that you struggled so much or for so long? I heard you say, you believe that God had an extreme call on your life. Do you think this was, sort of like a warfare kind of situation where, the enemy didn't want you to use your talents, or was this more of like a personal struggle? What do you think?
I think it's
Carmela, that's one of his songs that you were talking about for so long.
Yes.
Yeah, choose to worship. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go now.
Yeah, I mean, that song come from a rough place, man. I was struggling moment to moment to not go get high. When I say moment to moment, I'm not talking about just God keep me from getting high today. I'm talking about just, can I not get high for the next 10 minutes and I'll be all right. And then when I got to that 10 minute, I pray for 10 more minutes. And sometimes I failed and sometimes I didn't. But I'll tell you, man, the last time when I really broke that thing off of me, God broke that off of me through that song, I Choose to Worship.
Yeah.
I could choose to go out the door and go to the dope house, or I could choose to worship. And I learned this, I say this a lot, what you magnify will manifest.
Okay.
There were times that I focused so much on not getting high that I ended up getting high because my mind was on it so much. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Because what we magnify will manifest. Whatever you constantly keep your mind on, that your thoughts are going to bring circumstances and situations to you. And so I think it's an ongoing battle. I can't let my guard down. I can't let
That's
it.
right.
I can't let my guard, because I know he knows what kind of impact I have with people.
Yes.
When God gives me that mic, that's just my moment of impact. And Satan hates it. We go to places, man. Sometimes it's secular people, and I'll start talking about my testimony, and people start crying, coming out of the seats. Man. It's just Satan knows that, and so I think that he put a bullseye on my back before I come out of my mother's womb, and
Wow.
that's what I
Wow.
believe. Matter of fact, my mother, when she had me, the nurses, she tells a story. She said I knew it was gonna be trouble when the nurses brought him back. They said, back in the day, you should bring them down there with all the babies, and put them in the nursery.
Mhm.
And she brought me back to my mother. She said, he can't stay down there no more. He is hollering and screaming down there. He got the whole nursery. So they laid me down, and my
You're just
mother said that
warming
God
up.
told her. My mother said God told her, said, this is your prophet.
Mm.
And a lot of people get excited. A lot of mothers would get excited about it. But unless you know the assignment of Satan on prophets, you just get happy about that promotion, but you don't understand the process to get you to that level. And so
That's
my
right.
mother knew right off the bat, this boy's gonna fight for his life.
Mhm.
If he's my prophet, he's gonna have some battles. And I think that's so important for all of us to understand. I mean, both of you, I mean, y'all, you can't be here where you are right now without some hard places.
You better
Hard.
say that. You
You
better
know?
say that.
Yeah, when you start, I'll tell you when you
Every
know it's
day.
hard is when you start questioning your own identity. When you start questioning, is what these people saying about me true? Am I just living a lie, thinking I'm gonna come out of this? I'm gonna tell you, that's when you get a question mark. That's when you gotta start getting concerned, and it will happen. It will
Yes.
happen.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Daniel. Now you got me. I wanted to ask you about this because, it's interesting right now. Message, the magazine and the platform that we work with, we are endeavoring to make sure that we provide some ministry resources to people who are currently incarcerated. And that is so important to me because, as you say, sometimes you get to that point where you're struggling, for who am I and what does God want with me, or does he want me at all? That kind of thing. And so it's really important to me to hear from you. And maybe this goes back a little bit to the book, but, parents and people who see your loved ones going through such a hard time. Praise God, you made it through. I know plenty of moms and siblings who worried that they would not find their loved ones alive or that they'd be sent away for years. What are the texts? What are the experiences? What are the spiritual insights that we can share with people who have that kind of concern for their loved ones?
You're talking about the loved ones of the ones who were incarcerated.
Yes, the loved ones of the people who are struggling with substance abuse as well, or
Yeah.
anything like that.
I believe it's a fine line. I mean, my father tells a story because God ministered it to him when I was gone. I mean, they didn't know where I was for a long time. They would send people out to try to find me. Months go by, many weeks. But my dad, he referred to the book of the prodigal son, and he said, here's this boy who wants to take his money and run. He wants to go do anything, and he's spending it all on riotous living. We all know the story. Found himself in the pig's pen, and he came to himself. I can't keep. I know y'all thinking I'm just doing a promotion here, but I can't help it. I'm churchy. When you raise your kids in church, I don't care how raggedy your church is. Can I preach just for a minute? I got to take
Preach.
all these parents who are taking your kids from church to church to church to church because they don't have the right program, get them planted in a church. Even if it's, first of all churches got some raggedy places about them. I don't care how prominent you are. I travel. I go to churches every day of my life. I see it all over the world. Everybody's got some raggedy stuff. And if you leave that your church to go to another church and take your kids with them, always understand when you transplant, you gotta calculate a setback.
Mhm.
I know I don't have time to teach right now, but just remember that. You know, you cannot keep uprooting your kids and expect them to have a heritage and something that makes them turn back to Jesus when they go through heaven.
That's a word.
So, you know, even if everything's not in place and you know, acquaint your kids with the bride of Christ, because at the end of the day, that's where you want them. I lost my train of thought, so you got to tell me your question one more time.
You're on point though.
But that was it. I wanted to know the encouragement. What does a parent who doesn't know where their child is, what are they holding on to?
What they do, sis, and I know I knew I missed one part. So when the prodigal son came to himself, what he said, man, my father's got all this stuff over here. And I'm sitting up here hanging out with these pigs in this mud. He came to himself, and the scripture says that the prodigal's father, he saw him from afar off. He was walking the road back home. You know what the father did? He didn't go chasing that boy. He didn't go bail him out of jail. He didn't go become an enabler. You know what he did? Scripture says that he fattened the cow and he prepared a ring. And when the boy was coming home, he told his servants, he says, go get that fat cow. We're about to cook it, and we're going to have a big barbecue for my son. He's coming home.
All right.
So my encouragement to every loved one that's believing for your child, don't run out in them streets and enable him and help him do what he does. Sit at home and believe God that he's going to bring him home and fatten up the cow.
I'm a living witness. If you keep on blessing his name in spite of what you're going through, I'm a living witness that he'll bring you out. Yes, he will.
You know, I want to go back to what we were talking about, people who, I want to talk about the incarcerated, because when those guys are in there, I don't wish it on anybody, but I will tell you this. I say this all the time. I don't ever want to go back through it again, but I wouldn't take my journey for nothing. Because it was in those jail cells when mama couldn't get me out, when daddy couldn't get me out, when nobody could get me out but God. Guess who I had an experience with? God. So what I think that these loved ones, all they can do for their loved ones who are incarcerated, those who are wayward right now, all they can do right now is believe God that they're coming home and let God do what he wants to do in them. Let them have that experience. You know, that's what's going to happen in there. You know, that's what's going to happen, especially with people like y'all in the prisons. You know what I'm saying? Because they're gonna get that insight, and every time you throw that lure out there, you might just catch one.
That's right.
Your
So
mouth to God's ear.
get your book and get your single.
Oh, well, the single, you can get it on any streaming platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your music. So the song is already available there. We're going to pop up a video probably in the next couple of weeks.
I'm waiting because we'll show that on our network at Joy Broadcasting Network. We will definitely just show that.
Yeah, we need to get that over to you. And then the book, just go to Amazon and pick it up. Change Your Mind, Change Your World, Wes Morgan. It's a good thing, man, you know, because it's a different type of book, because this book keeps you cognizant of a thought every day versus reading a book and saying, I read this book in a couple of weeks, and then you put it down and you may not ever pick it up again. This book is constant, it's repetition. You know, I wish that I could get into the prisons, but I just don't have that way of doing that. But if I could get into the prisons and let these guys walk through this journey with me, spend 365 days with me. That's what I tell people. Spend 365 days with me. Now, I could do podcasts, but the truth of it is, if I don't do podcasts, just the fact that they're reading that 365 days, it make 1129 go by a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about the prevention and recovery work that you did or do for other people?
Yeah, we did Recovery Fest for a long time. we started moving it around right after the pandemic lifted. We've not really gotten that back on point like we need to. That was a phenomenal event that we would put together every year. But the prevention thing for me, what I'm trying to do now is try to utilize our children and our adults to co-recover.
Okay.
And that's where I got the prevention thing is you can think about the way that the younger people who would be in the Department of Prevention and the older people who have already been broken by the systems, the judicial systems, use their stories for prevention and use this innocence over here in these kids to inspire these guys and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I may have lost 20 years, but I may have just spared 20 years in some child's life. You know what I'm saying? It builds
Yes.
both. You know,
Yes.
these kids with their innocence can look at all these people who have wrecked their lives. And those guys can speak into the kids, but at the same time, while these guys are speaking into kids, they're getting recovered because they're saying, you know what? My mess is not a waste. My mess is not a waste. It's because if you can get those guys that are incarcerated to start thinking that they have a purpose, that there is some value to their life, because I don't know if you've ever been in, I've been in behind doors. I'll say that, not just bars, but behind doors. It is the most horrible thing because you got to be introduced to the real you, what you did, why you did it, and nobody really know the truth about you but you. And so when you start really dealing with the reality of your life and the results of your decisions, man, that's why a lot of people, they commit suicide in prison. They can't take the weight and the burden and the heartache of what they put their parents through or their children through or whatever, y'all know the story.
Yeah.
So we got to build these guys back up. And that's where I see prevention and recovery working together.
You know, I like that your mess is not a waste. That sounds like that could be a song or another book. So,
I'm telling you, man, don't waste your pain.
Don't waste your pain.
Don't waste your pain, man. Listen, I go to the Tennessee prisons for women out here. That's my girls out there. I go out there and I have to walk across the yard. I preached a message one night to them. Ride it out. Don't let time do you. You do time and just ride it out. Whatever. And every time I go in the yard, they say, Pastor Wess, we riding it out. But that's something I really enjoy doing. It is a highlight. So when we got the call about you guys showing interest in what we do, man, my eyes just lit up because I've been there and I know the pain that comes along with that. And it's tough. And if you ain't, I mean, it'll take a strong man down. I've seen some strong OGs, old gangsters that they were hard, but I've seen that time take them down. So,
wow.
Yeah. Well, I just can't thank you enough for taking the time with us today. You're a real blessing. Your ministry is a real blessing. I praise God for the call, like you said, on your life and the one that your parents recognize. And I identify and I can see how you said, the prodigal son story, because that's the way they sound in the stories that you share about them, how they were there for you, they were waiting for you, they weren't necessarily enabling you, but they were waiting and praying for you and expecting and believing God to bring you back home. That's really inspirational. I just think it's the word that some people need right now. Right now, these kids are going through some stuff. We were just looking today about doing a magazine, an issue. People want to talk about fentanyl. And they said, we're not talking about overdose. We're talking about poisoning, because people aren't out here trying to smoke or, do anything with fentanyl, but it's there and it's poisoning and taking people's lives. I just want people to know that there is hope, and you get that churchiness, that spirit of the Lord in you. He brings transformation and change, and that's what you inspired us on today. So thank you so much just for taking the time.
Sis, I love it. I love it. And I thank you guys again, as I said in the outset of the interview. I just thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of what y'all doing and sharing your platform with me. And if there's anything we can do for y'all from the West Side, y'all let us know. But I just, man, I love doing ministry. I love doing it the way we're doing it right now. Hopefully that this message gets out to the right people, and the right person that's right on the ropes, can just snap out. And that's really the thing. God really dealt with me. He said the reason why Satan is using drugs so much, and has always really, but even more now, is because it's with the mind that we serve the Lord. And the enemy knows if he can attack our mind,
That's right.
he can keep us out of it. One of the things I don't understand about these guys who do this fentanyl and these drugs is you get high for about 2 seconds and you nod off and you pass out and sometimes die. Nowadays, you don't know what you're getting.
No.
And neither one's wrong, but you understand what I'm saying. We're just living in a dark time right now, and people don't start speaking up.
God got a lot in store for you. Big things.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Bigger and bigger.
Yes.
God bless. We thank you so much.
God bless you. Talk soon.